All right, so here we go, finishing up the exercise genetics stuff. This is where we left off. Main things that I want you to know about this. The two main players for up here, strength and hypertrophy signaling, and then down here, endurance or like mitochondrial biogenesis signaling. AKT, mTOR, PKB, what were we talking about here? Two main things I want you to know about it. For us to accrue muscle mass, there's always protein synthesis, which we think about as a gain, and muscle protein breakdown, which we think about as a loss, right? So protein synthesis minus muscle protein breakdown equals net protein accumulation. So if you have more synthesis and less breakdown, that's good. Your biceps are getting bigger. We're going to look good on the beach. Now, if we have more muscle protein breakdown versus synthesis, that could be like some type of cachexic or sarcopenic condition, meaning that like we're losing muscle mass. That's not such a great thing. So AKT and PKB, which will be a slide, I think, 2 up, it actually does both of these things. It activates protein synthesis and it decreases breakdown. And I'm going to show you where that's happening. But where it's decreasing breakdown, I don't think that's abundantly important for us to like recall on like exams and things. So that's all I want you to know about that. AMPK, this, you really need to know about this. If y'all recall, there were 2 drugs that we talked about last class, like one for type 2 diabetes. Right? Does anybody remember the names of these? Metformin, yes, type 2 diabetes. That is an AMPK agonist, and ICAR was as well. So AICAR, all of that capital. All of those are AMPK agonists. The reason that those are such big deal important things is because it seems like almost everything in just about any cell, not just muscle cells, you can draw back to AMPK. Thus, it is called the master regulator of the cell. And really, at least to my understanding, why it is called that is because it is essentially sensing how much energy is on board in a particular cell. Is everyone good with this? Right? So like if we have a bunch of energy, we can grow. If we don't have a lot of energy, we can't grow. Right? So whichever way we're going on that, we have to adapt. So if we don't have a bunch of energy, we need to get more efficient or economical with the amount of energy that we do have. Whereas if we have a bunch of energy, then we can essentially silence AMPK, and we don't have to be as efficient. Does that make sense? Everyone good with this? Right? Okay, good. So it increases mitochondrial proteins and glucose transport. GLUT4, that will be coming up whenever we get into exercise metabolism, however, not yet. So here, just kind of showing you what's going on. I think there's a couple of aspects that I think are pretty important. Can everyone conceptualize this? Right? Hopefully everyone remembers like Z-discs, actin, myosin, all of that. All of that's going on right here. So whenever we're having numerous contractions, that's breaking down ATP into ADP and subsequently AMP. And once there's a sufficient amount of AMP, then we'll trigger AMPK. Then a hop, skip, and a jump. Then we get to PGC1 alpha. And that's going to go to the, man, I need to breathe more whenever I talk, huh? All right. That's going to go into the nucleus. And that's going to actually get onto numerous like promoter regions. So what all of these mean, I don't care if you recall this. I just want you to know like kind of the 3 levels that are happening here. So PGC1 alpha, yes, it's increasing mitochondrial biogenesis. That's really cool, interesting stuff. But it's doing it by like 3 different things. So FAO, can anyone venture a guess as to what that stands for? Fatty acid oxidation. Fatty acid oxidation, that's what that stands for. Part of the adaptation to getting more mitochondria is we get better at burning fat for fuel. So mostly we burn carbohydrates and fat for fuel. Is everyone good with that? Like you've heard of this, right? Right? Right. Right. Good. Good. Okay. So increasing genes associated with that. Like, has anyone ever taken the supplement carnitine? No, not a lot of supplement people in here? All right, take more things. Take more things. You know, it's wait, no, I asked y'all to fill out the B word. So okay, no, don't take more things. Okay, so carnitine is a supplement a lot of people take. The carnitine shuttle increases how much fat that we can oxidize. That's not important yet. That will come up in bioenergetics. The next thing here, ETC genes. Can anyone venture a guess as to what ETC stands for? What's up, Nick? Yes, Nick, you're 100% right. Electron transport chain. That's what ETC stands for. So all of those, the electron transport chain, all of those are proteins, and we need to make them, right? So we need more of them in a mitochondria in order for it to work better. So this will make more sense whenever we're into bioenergetics. And then TFAM, that just stands for like transcription factor A mitochondria or something like that. It's really just mitochondrial-based proteins that don't necessarily always have to do with like energy requirements. It more has to do with like kind of structural aspects of how the mitochondria actually is formed. So that one's not 100% important. So next thing, here, resistance. What's happening under these conditions? So growth factors frequently go in through HIP3. If anybody has ever heard of second messenger cascades, we will talk about this. I believe in chapter either 4 or 5. I don't recall exactly which one. It's the hormonal chapter. There's different second messenger cascades, so like the IP3 cascade, the cyclic AMP cascade. This one is an example of the IP3 cascade. And here, PKB, obviously this was British people that put this together. So I want you to see what's going on here. So different growth factors. If you recall, we talked about IGF-1. Everyone remember this? Right? IGF-1. So that's insulin-like growth factor. It kind of elevates in your bloodstream as you consume more protein. And also, it is somewhat like mechanically sensitive. So if you're like lifting weights, you have a higher circulating IGF-1 and MGF-1, but that's neither here nor there. So that triggers PKB or AKT, whatever we want to call it. AKT is probably the preferred one, at least here in the States. Here, protein breakdown. This is the part that I told you don't really need to know. I just want you to know that it's related to inhibiting protein breakdown. At any moment inside of a cell, we have something called FOXO3. So it stands for like fork head something or another, like different biochemists name things completely ridiculous things. It goes into the nucleus and inhibits FOXO3 from triggering protein breakdown. Is that kind of interesting to anybody? So at any given moment, we have protein breakdown just happening. And then AKT, after it's triggered by some flavor of growth factor, it will go into the nucleus and hit the brakes on breakdown. Right? So like if you're trying to hit a brake in a car and then someone grabs your leg and doesn't let you do that, now you can grow. Is this analogy stupid? Yes? Thank you, DJ. As many of you know, I don't drive my car very much. I normally walk, so I don't understand how cars work really. So there we go. It inhibits that. Just know that it inhibits like protein breakdown. That's good enough for me. Over here, it does numerous intracellular things to eventually this torque, that's mTOR to us. There's actually a few different flavors of mTOR, but for us, mTOR is perfectly fine. AKT will go over and trigger mTOR, and then P70S6K, increase muscle protein synthesis. Everyone good with this so far? Right? I know this is like a foreign language, that's why the pop quiz today wasn't a real pop quiz, because I want you to understand it better. Something else here that I want you to know. Hopefully you see amino acids right there. That amino acids and the plus sign, that's not a cation. That means that amino acids trigger mTOR, meaning that they can trigger mTOR independent of AKT being phosphorylated. So has anyone ever heard of the branched chain amino acids? Anybody? Right? Like, why is whey protein so good? Or is it not good? Bunch of lactose intolerant people in here, right? No? Okay, because it has a concentration of the particular amino acids that trigger mTOR the best. So there's effectively like 20 amino acids, 9 of which are essential, 3 of which are super essential, which are called the branched chain amino acids. Write this down. Leucine. Leucine. That was harder than it looked, Hannah. Leucine. That is likely the most anabolic, meaning triggers mTOR the most amino acid in existence. Typically, to top out muscle protein synthesis, you need about 2 to 3 grams of it. Yes, Nick? Leucine. Is that right, Joey? Beautiful. Okay. That one is likely the most anabolic. Now, the other 2 branched chain amino acids, which are essentially complementary in triggering this mTOR, are called isoleucine. So just put iso in front of leucine. I don't want to spell it again. And iso being spelled I-S-O. It's funny to me. Ah, man. Getting red because I'm being graded today. All right, cool. All right, isoleucine, that's another important one. The third important one is called valine. V-A, bless you. Starting back over. V-A, L-I-N-E. Valine. So those 3 are overall the most important in terms of stimulating muscle protein synthesis. If anybody's ever heard about like the what is it called? The like post-workout nutrition window. I forget what hippies are calling it now, but like whatever it is. Typically like 30 minutes to like an hour after you exercise. Now that's not true. Actually, muscle protein synthesis stays up for 48 hours, so it doesn't really seem to matter too much. But what has the most like additive effect is the leucine, isoleucine, and valine. And like I'll probably show you some research and adaptations to exercise later on, but just like for a bit of a taste, that's what I want you to know. So there, amino acids. Then we go around here, and then we have increased muscle protein synthesis. And like there's a bunch of cool things going on here, like eukaryotic initiation factor. You don't need to know anything about that. Really just AKT, mTOR, P70S6K, or RPS6, whatever you want to call it, and then increased protein synthesis and translation. So far, so good? All right. The reason that we're talking about these things is for training or adaptation, right? So we're going to get into like some other things, namely the interference effect, which I kind of primed you on before. Any type of exercise is effectively trying to do one of these 2 things. And if you've ever taken like any of the strength and conditioning periodization classes with Josh Ireland, super awesome human being. That's why we periodize things, meaning that we train like strength and hypertrophy at certain points, and we train endurance at other points, and we train power at other points. I'm not going to get into that so much, but this is the reason why, because there's an interference effect. Meaning, if you train one of them in close proximity to training the other one, that it essentially silences or dampens the adaptation. So, like, why are we going to go to the gym and train really hard, and then do something stupid right after it? And, like, I don't mean stupid. Well, maybe I do. Maybe I do. Do something stupid right after it to inhibit the adaptation that we were going to have. Right? Like, does anyone want to be in the gym, like, all the time? I mean, some of us, exercise addicts like myself, we enjoy it, and that's fine. Like, that's why I'm not getting any bigger. That's, 5'5", right? It's because I train too much. But how we can couple these together, because numerous sports, and really in your daily life, you probably need some endurance and some strength. So how do we couple these together? Wanted to, from this slide, I'm backtracking a little bit, so I'm sorry about this. The main thing that I want you to know is that AMPK, the master regulator of the cell, that silences or inhibits mTOR. So effectively, the interference effect is that step. Yes, Kyle.
So is that kind of why distance runners won't usually get increased muscle because they do both?
Yeah, definitely. So like distance runners, even distance runners who lift weights, typically there will not be sufficient like ATP within the cell to have protein synthesis going all the time. Because like if you don't know, protein synthesis growing muscle mass, it's a very energy demanding process. So certainly yes. And it seems like now, like since we're in exercise, genetics, and evolution, it seems that we preferentially do one of these over the other one. Meaning that humans overall seem to be better at adapting to endurance than we do to strength. So, like, has anyone ever like arm wrestled a chimpanzee? No? No, they're super strong, right? Yeah, like they're like at least somewhat smaller than me, not very much, but like they're normally about this high. There's actually a chimpanzee called the Bando ape or Bondo ape or something that lives in like the Democratic Republic of the Congo that is my height and would likely eat everyone in here. But that has nothing to do with physiology, so back on track. Got it. They're extremely strong. Humans, by comparison, are fairly weak. However, we can outrun for great distances just about any animal that has ever lived. Right? There was this horse race called the Western States 100 that used to be a horse race, and this one guy, I forget his name. I really should remember his name. His horse got sick, and he said, "Screw it, I'm going to run it," and he almost won. Like beating a bunch of horses. So like anytime you look at a horse and think it's majestic, well, you can outrun it over the course of 100 miles. So keep that in mind, right? Humans are pretty awesome. So we're top of the food chain. And also throwing spears, but whatever. And guns. Sorry, forgot about that one. But here, that's the main thing going on there. To reiterate something that I talked about a little while ago from Jeffrey Gergley, a guy I actually know, 2009. Particular exercise modality might have an impact on training adaptations. So can anyone tell me what this slide means? I talked about it before. What's up, Quinn?
One just resistance training, and one was resistance training with like a bike.
Yep.
And one was resistance training.
Yes, so Quinn was right. What Quinn said is that there were effectively 3 groups looking at resistance training adaptations. So one group, effectively the control group, only resistance trained, they gained the most strength over the course of 6 weeks, and I think that last post ABC, I think that was 12 weeks later, however, I don't recall that exactly. And then another group was resistance training while riding the cycloergometers, which we're going to be sprinting on tomorrow. They gained the second most amount of strength, and lastly, running on a treadmill seemed to inhibit strength gains the most. So if you're ever working with people and they need to do some flavor of cardio and they need to get stronger, the modality that we would pick is cycling. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Like, we're not actually breaking down as much like ATP. If anybody remembers, it took a lot longer to burn 50 calories on a bike than it did on a treadmill. Hopefully everyone remembers that from lab. That was part of the point of doing that. And also, there's not a lot of like eccentric loading, meaning muscle lengthening or damaging contractions happening in cycling. Everyone good with this? So if we're not damaging things, then it's a little bit easier to adapt. So recall that exercise modality might have something to do with going on. Okay, so here, oh man, we only have a couple more minutes. That's all right. I'll get into chapter 2 next time. A couple of things. 2 or 3 more slides and we'll call it a day. Y'all good with that? All right. So some training applications. And here, Kyle, this is probably particularly interesting to you. So if we have to train both, meaning like endurance and some type of strength training, what order ought we do it in? Right, like bodybuilding.com or like Fit Sugar, whatever, that's a question, right? Oprah magazine, maybe? No? That's, I'd vote for it, but whatever. So this question, PGC1 alpha, pay attention to this. Endurance adaptation, right here. Endurance adaptation. They're just looking at mRNA or messenger RNA expression, so we stimulated transcription. So this is kind of hard for us to, I wish they would have done it differently. So this right here, resistance training alone, so he's about to do a snatch. Here, resistance training, and then like endurance training. Over here, endurance training alone, then endurance training, followed by resistance training. If we're looking for endurance adaptation, this is the main thing I want you to know. Pay attention to these dark gray bars, how like arbitrary units, so like don't pay attention to the unit of it per se, but it doesn't matter, resistance first or endurance first for endurance adaptation. Everyone good with that? I don't see people writing that down. You should. Now, here's a problem with this. Here's a problem with this. A fairly large part getting better at things is your nervous system adapting to it. So typically you would want to do whatever you want to adapt to the most first. But if we're only looking at having more mitochondria inside of a cell, if you do resistance training first, prior to endurance training, or vice versa, it doesn't matter. Is everyone good with this? Good? Big take-home point? You want more mitochondria? Doesn't matter. Do one then the other. All good. All right. Next thing. And this one, I'm sorry, it's a little bit harder to see. But I'm not super good with screenshots. So this one is P70S6K. So over here, looking at the mRNA of like this downstream like protein synthesis marker. So again, on this like left-hand side, the pre-exercise, doing endurance first, then endurance followed by resistance training. This one, this picture on the left, I don't think is really that important for us to look at because it's kind of like obvious, to me at least. So if you do endurance training, we're not going to get a protein synthesis like cascadal stimulation, right? Is everyone good with that? That's what that white bar or like the lighter bar is saying. Now the other bar is saying that like in order to get some type of like anabolic or protein synthesis like adaptation, you have to lift weights, right? Yeah, no way, dude, right? Cool. Now the next one I think is the more important one for us to know, the one on the right-hand side. If we do resistance training alone versus resistance training followed by endurance training. Really pay attention to this 3-hour post. That is effectively the interference effect. So you still will get resistance training muscular adaptations if you do cardiovascular activity after lifting weights. However, the dark bar, it's blunted. So kind of the best idea. Now, time considerations, this doesn't always work. If you have to do both of them, you want as much time in between them as you possibly can. This is why, like, if anyone pays attention to bodybuilders, they frequently will do like cardio in the morning or weights in the morning, and then eat a bunch of times throughout the day, and then do cardio or weights in the evening. That is why they do it on a physiological level. Everyone good with that? Right? Now, that one is quite a bit more time intensive, so But, you know, that would be an ideal world. Everyone good with this? So here, kind of summary slide. So max strength and muscle at CSA. CSA just means hypertrophy or growth. Cross-sectional area are impaired by training both strength and endurance. Resistance performed after endurance amplifies pathways related to mitobio. Endurance performed after resistance attenuates pathways related to muscle growth. Those are kind of the main things I wanted you to know from here. All right, so everyone make sure to watch the videos for the Wingate stuff tomorrow. My favorite lab. Maybe I'm just saying that, who knows? Any questions about anything? All right, cool. I'll see y'all tomorrow.